Superman is the hero of heroes, the very first of all in DC, and the one who redefined what humanity knew as a legend. But over time and nearly 100 years of publications, more than one Superman has appeared, each with a different power level. And today we're going to take a look at the 10 most powerful among them. And All-Star Superman is the one who opens today's video as the 10th most powerful Superman to ever exist, thanks to the massive power boost he received in his story. After falling into a trap set by Lex Luthor, Superman flew too close to the sun, and his cells became overloaded with energy, making the character even more super. He became immune to kryptonite, strong enough to defeat both Samson and Atlas in an arm wrestling match, and Parasite was overwhelmed just by being near him. His most famous feat was lifting 200 quintillion tons with one arm, though he himself claimed he could go far beyond that. This is also one of the most intelligent versions of the Man of Steel, having created a universe and accelerated its time just to see what a world without his presence would be like. The problem is that this power boost was temporary, and Superman was slowly dying due to the excess energy in his body. On top of that, the character doesn't have many feats, since he comes from a standalone story, and the ones he does have are surpassed by all the others. Moving on, Kingdom Come Superman comes from a story that is a true classic within DC Comics. Just like All-Star Superman, he's a character enhanced by increased solar energy. But unlike the previously mentioned version, this one absorbed solar energy gradually over time, not all at once. He is an older version of Superman who became even more powerful through prolonged exposure to the sun. Powerful enough to easily defeat entire teams of heroes, something the traditional Superman can also do, but with more difficulty. He has demonstrated superior strength compared to the entire Justice Society, can measure time in nanoseconds, and Jay Garrick stated that he is as fast as Wally West. One of his most iconic scenes is when he and his past self, the traditional Superman, must confront Hercules. While the classic Superman was easily taken down by the Lion of Olympus, Kingdom Come Superman wasn't even moved by the blows, and Hercules hurt his own hand trying to punch him. He became highly resistant to kryptonite, to the point we can say he no longer has that vulnerability. In short, this Superman is basically the traditional Superman with his powers taken to a whole new level. And that's exactly why he ranks lower on the list. The fact that he only has the same powers as regular Superman. The next characters I'll mention also have more strength than the standard version, but along with other powers that raise their level even further. Thus, both he and All-Star Superman rank lower because they're simply physically superior versions of a normal Superman. Speaking of even more physically powerful versions, the Silver Age Superman is the second incarnation of the character and the most remembered when we think of superpowered versions of Superman. This Kal-El has the same origin as the traditional Superman, but at times his powers were treated as virtually limitless. He casually hurled a neutron star away from himself and Krypton, and the weight of such a star exceeds trillions of tons. This is the Superman known for the legendary feat of pulling multiple planets in a row, linked by a colossal and nearly indestructible chain. On more than one occasion, he moved planet-destroying asteroids, stars, natural satellites, and mountains as if they were nothing. But this Superman wasn't just about strength. He also demonstrated the ability to emit energy blasts and break the very laws of physics. He was immune to magical transmutation attacks. His heat vision was millions of times hotter than the sun. He could time travel, visit alternate universes, and even had hypnosis powers. To be honest, this version of Superman was the hardest to place on the list. After all, during his time, he was the ultimate hero, and the writers had no problem completely ignoring limits. The character even had situational powers like freeze vision, clone summoning, and much more. However, he still had kryptonite as a weakness, and some variants could even strip him of all his powers. Not to mention that the upcoming versions have a much wider variety of abilities. Even if they might be physically weaker than this one, still, he ranks 8th on the list. Moving forward with the list, Superman 1,000,000 is one of the most overrated versions of the Man of Steel. This version exists in the 853rd century of the post-crisis DC universe, where he wandered the cosmos, accused accumulating power and knowledge, even entering the source itself. Not only that, he spent centuries inside the sun, even building his Fortress of Solitude there, which gradually and continuously boosted his powers. Finally, he possesses the last Green Lantern ring and absorbed part of the powers of one of his fifth-dimensional descendants, making him even more powerful. The problem is that the character lacks practical feats. In theory, he's incredibly powerful, but in practice, he did almost nothing. To be fair, he did manage to create an immortal body for Lois Lane, bringing her back to life so they could be together, and opened a portal to the past after his father's funeral. If we consider that he's stronger than his son, Superman Secundus, then theoretically Superman 1,000,000 could do things like enter the fifth dimension through brute force, extinguish stars with his super breath, and be faster than tachyons. But in practice, he never did any of that, so he ranks lower on the list. And that's not even mentioning his pathetic death at the hands of Unkidness Raven's henchmen. Strange Visitor Superman comes from the story called Adventures of Superman, which begins in 1939 on the outskirts of Metropolis and continues in 2013. This happens as everyone is celebrating Superman's 75th anniversary, but the truly interesting part begins when he meets Mr. Mxyzptlk Telk. First of all, it's worth noting that in just a few moments he managed to remove the fifth-dimensional imp from Earth, but that's nothing compared to what he would later accomplish. That's because he entered the fifth dimension alongside Mr. Mxyzptlk Telk, venturing into spaces that would be dangerous even for the imp himself. It was never explained exactly what this space was. Many theorize it to be the sixth dimension, but the story never confirms it. After entering this space, he lived for billions of years, remaining active even until the entropy of the universe, which shows that he is essentially immortal to time. As reality approached its end, he split into several copies of himself and held the universe together through sheer willpower. This was with just a tiny fraction of his original power, as he had just divided himself. Then all those copies merged to create what is known as the Strange Visitor Superman, who with his powers could open rifts in space-time, surpass the death of the universe, and survive. The story spans only 3 issues, but from what little we saw, even in his weakest form, he is at the very least universal level. All of his weaknesses were eventually nullified, but since we don't know the full extent of his power, I placed him at 6, though he could definitely rank even higher. Dark Crisis Superman is a form of Superman that appeared during the events involving Pariah, the character from the original Multiversal Crisis who had returned as a villain. The first thing Pariah did, being more intelligent than most villains, was to remove the Justice League from the board before launching his plans. He used cosmic energy to create pocket realities where the League members would remain trapped while Pariah destroyed the rest of the heroes. Most of the Justice League didn't realize they were imprisoned except for Superman, who was in a super lucid dream state. He became aware of his false reality, and since that world was linked to him and powered by Pariah's machine, he was able to absorb it into himself as a form of empowerment. After that, he basically severed Pariah's connection to that world, leaving him extremely weakened. This pushed Pariah into desperation, and he tried to blackmail the Justice League with the threat of destroying everything if they attempted to escape, which of course they did. Superman combined his power with the Flash's Speed Force and Green Lantern's willpower to bring the League back to Earth Zero from Multiverse 2. This isn't a Superman with major feats. In fact, he has almost none, but he carries the energy Pariah used to stabilize the multiverse. Not to mention they were able to travel between multiverses thanks to his power, so he ranks a bit higher on the list. And yes, there is a version of Superman who is simply a milkman, and he's extremely powerful, which is why he ranks relatively high on the list. He's an imperfect copy of Superman, born from 2 women who technically don't exist. As a child, he was taken in by Retcon, a multiversal organization that kidnaps and rewrites reality to create entertainment for the eponymous gods who destroy universes and can only be distracted by constant entertainment. After being taken, he was merged with the Superman archetype to become their living weapon and universal control agent. The Milkman's milk has the power to alter the story or reality of any comic book according to the writer's will. Basically, he has meta-narrative powers that allow him to override plot devices. He is the personification of the plot itself. Using his powers, for example, he once turned Batman into a priest running an orphanage, and also turned Wonder Woman into a housewife married to Steve Trevor, completely subservient to him. On top of that, since he is a genetic copy of Prime Earth Superman, he is presumed to have the same powers and abilities. Because of this, it's assumed he also shares Superman's natural weaknesses, but that remains pure theory. One confirmed weakness, though, is that exposure to anything that reminds him of his true self, like a familiar object or person, can trigger his memories and free him from the milk's influence, the character hasn't appeared much, and normally that would place him lower, but his power scaling is so high that I allowed him to sit much higher on the list, losing only to Cosmic Armor Superman. This version was born in Limbo, where he and Ultraman merged and activated the armor to battle Mandrak, the corrupted Monitor. This armor is the last line of defense for the multiverse, the ultimate weapon against Mandrak, powerful enough to be aware it's inside a comic book. He can feel the reader's breath and sense the pages turning as the story is read. He even held the entire dimension of Limbo at his fingertips. In his battle against Mandrak, Cosmic Armor Superman kept evolving and adapting to his opponent. He withstood an attack with the heat of 10 billion suns and defeated Mandrak by throwing him into the original Monitor, where he eventually fell into the dark multiverse. But despite what many believe, Cosmic Armor Superman doesn't have infinite adaptation. If he did, he'd be simply invincible. And why am I saying this? Because during the fight, he became severely damaged as Mandrak was also evolving. By the end, the cosmic armor itself admitted it could no longer repair itself and was rendered unusable for future battles. In other words, it was a one-time battle and the character wouldn't be able to use that power again. Still, based on everything I've mentioned here, I firmly believe this version ranks above the others, but he's not as invincible and omnipotent as many people claim. The World Forger is not originally a version of Superman. In fact, he is the son of Perpetua, the creator of the DC multiverse. But for a short period right after his introduction, he disguised himself as a version of Superman, even creating a new alternate universe with a Justice League of the future. He used this new appearance and his powers to trap the original Superman in a parallel reality where he had already imprisoned tens of thousands of other Supermen. As soon as Superman realized he was trapped, the World Forger, disguised as Superman, fought him and easily immobilized the Man of Steel, who was somewhat weakened. Still, Superman retained much of his power level and the World Forger merely toyed with him. Later, he incapacitated the entire Justice League except for Batman, who was pretending to be an ally of the World Forger at that moment to support the original Superman. After that, Batman helped Superman escape from the dimension where he was trapped, and together they temporarily knocked out the World Forger, who later became an ally of the Justice League. The fact is, the World Forger is a being from the 6th dimension, above even the 5th dimensional imps, who are extremely powerful reality manipulators. With a single strike of his hammer, he can create entire realities or use the residual energy from reality creation for other purposes. The character stands side by side with his brothers, the Anti-Monitor and the Monitor, and just looking at their power levels explains why he is third on today's list. As I mentioned, the character isn't necessarily a Superman version, but he temporarily posed as one. Even Martian Manhunter tried to read his mind and believed him to be the real Kal-El, so I'm including him on the list because of that. And finally, Superboy Prime is indisputably the most powerful evil version of the Man of Steel, and in my opinion, the most powerful version of the Blue Scout. The character originated in the Prime Universe, which is the real universe, where until his adolescence, he was unaware of his origins and powers. Unfortunately, he discovered the truth too late when the Anti-Monitor was destroying realities and his world was destroyed along with countless others. But moving on to his actual feats, his most famous is tearing down walls of reality that even altered the flow of DC's history. This is a huge feat considering that Earth 2 Superman, basically the Golden Age Superman, didn't even scratch the same wall when punching it. That same Superman was later killed by Superboy Prime in a fight involving him and the traditional Superman, where Superboy fought both at the same time. In fact, Superboy Prime is a team buster. It takes groups and whole teams to stand a chance against him. One of the most incredible scenes with the character, in my opinion, is him simply ignoring multiple attacks coming his way simultaneously. He has fought the Green Lantern Corps, Justice League, Justice Society, Titans, and the Guardians of the Universe all at once. The situation got so bad that they had to bring in Sodom Yacht to merge with the Ion entity to try to stop him, and even then Superboy Prime won. While trying to recover his universe, he captured and tortured Mr. MX Vitalk, who narrowly escaped death and became traumatized, locking himself away in the 5th dimension. But in DC's latest big crisis, an even more powerful version of him, created by the Batman Who Laughs, appeared. He joined the heroes and fought the Batman Who Laughs with dark energy and powers borrowed from Dr. Manhattan. Even with all that power, the Batman Who Laughs, who had defeated Perpetua, couldn't do anything against Superboy Prime. At this point, Superboy was on par with some of the most powerful beings in the publisher, and that's exactly why I placed him first in the video. And it's precisely this character who closes today's video. If you enjoyed it, you know what to do. Drop a like down below and tell me which of these versions is your favorite. Send it to that friend of yours who doesn't understand comics at all and help the channel keep growing. Thanks and see you next time.